College football week 10.
Yeah, baby.
Just about officially in the books. I am Ty Hildebrand. He is Dan Rubenstein. This is the Solid Verbal College Football Podcast. Thanks for stopping by, Dan. We had high hopes for college football week 10. I feel like it lived up to those expectations. We named it Centaur Saturday. I really don't want you to play the sound.
Do you want to do it live? They're like,
I don't want you to do that unless you have to. If the spirit moves you here at the campfire, so be it.
Sure.
But we had a multitude of big games all throughout college football. We're going to talk through those as we start up the fire. We're going to talk through all the things that gave us the warm fuzzies. We're also going to talk about some of the scary stories around the campfire and offer a roast or two, yes, including Verballer Reverbs here a little bit later on in the show. You also wanted to provide an update. I don't want to give too much away, but we'll give an update on, let's just say, the surrounding areas outside our campfire, yeah?
Of course, absolutely. Yeah, you head on a swivel when you're on a campfire out in nature. You know that.
Shall we just dive right in here and talk about college football week 10?
We have some big dog headliners, yes.
Let's start up that fire. Texas 33, K-State 30 in overtime. This game was going on earlier in the day, kicked at noon Eastern, right around the time you and I were doing our Notre Dame and Clemson live watch-along. We'll get to that one in a little bit, don't you worry. This was a wild football game that saw Texas jump out to a 20-point lead late in the third quarter. We were on the stream thinking it was over. But then K-State comes storming back. They take advantage of Texas mistakes. I think fumbles on consecutive drives by Texas. K-State turns those into like 21 points. Before you know it, they're kicking an extra point for the lead, an extra point that they missed. K-State eventually goes into overtime with Texas. They have a chance to win it. Texas only kicks a field goal on their first possession. K-State's got it 4th and goal. Chris Kleiman, ever the riverboat gambler, decides we're going for it.
Let's do it right here, right now.
We're going for the score. We're going for the win. We're on the road. Let's get it done. And they did not have so-called Excelsior, Dan. They did not have it. Will Howard almost sacked, technically an incompletion.
Slipped and threw it up, yeah.
Just not the right play at the right time as Texas escapes at home, again, 33-30. This was a game that I feel honestly went a lot like you and I expected. We both predicted K-State was going to win. K-State could have won, but we saw a lot of what I think both of us saw on tape, at least on the Malik Murphy side, right? Because when we did the preview episode in advance of college football week 10, one of the things we saw was in the face of pressure, Malik Murphy floats it. He floats it.
Yeah. He panics a little bit, and it's to be expected, right? He's a backup quarterback. He's raw. He doesn't have, he didn't have the experience of playing against Wyoming, playing against smaller opponents, obviously Alabama early on in this schedule, to get into a rhythm by November. So all things considered, still doing a pretty decent job.
He started off like a ball of fire, but then he started to revert back to what I think we saw on the tape, which was some of those folly floaters, some balls that were not very high percentage. He was still all around, I think, pretty good in this game. I think he took strides and moved forward. But that being said, it's, I think, an open question where Texas falls in this Big 12 race, which is suddenly wide open for reasons we're about to discuss here on the show. As they move forward, it felt like this was one they could have lost.
Oh, and one they very easily could have lost. And I think you have to look at what the Texas defense was able to mostly do. Look, they're not put in the greatest position with Texas turning the ball over the way that they did in the second half. But what the Texas defense did in that first half against what has turned into a good Kansas State offense, especially getting into a rhythm on the ground, getting more balance, getting better in the red zone. Kansas State's offense was largely shut down in that first half. And that is ultimately the difference in a game this close. And when Texas has that to fall back on, those playmakers up front that came to play at the end of the game, came to play at the beginning of the game, you can, lucky sometimes is better than bad. Actually, no, lucky is always better than bad. And you can say Texas is lucky to get out of this with a win. All good. Much better to win than lose. And on Kansas State's front, I thought they tightened up really nicely in the second half. Their guys were flying all over the field. They found themselves in the best possible positions to take advantage of Texas miscues. But, at the end, you got to play 4 quarters against a quality team, and Kansas State absolutely did not on either side of the ball.
No, I mean, this game set third down offense back about 75 years.
Yeah.
It was a combined 4 of 29 on third downs. Each team converted 2, but to your point on the Texas defense, K-State held to only 33 rushing yards and 29 attempts. Comes out to about 1.1 a carry if you care about such math. The Texas defense, again, finding some things that it can do to limit the opponent. And Will Howard wasn't good for a good chunk of this game. He turned it on in the second half. But alas, this is a win. A win for Texas. Big home win. They've got road games now at TCU and Iowa State, back-to-back weeks. That Iowa State game's pretty big in hindsight, and Texas Tech to close out the year. So, look, with how wide open this conference appears to be, could drop one of those games, especially if it's Malik Murphy. But Texas, by virtue of its defense, I think is in a pretty good spot. They are the pace car in the Big 12.
Yeah, and look, we should also mention Kansas State had the opportunity to tie this game with a field goal near the end and then got the ball back and got the field goal.
Yeah.
So they were in a position to close it out, and Texas was very much in a position to give this game away, given how they started out the game, but hung around, kept their heads on, and managed to come out of this with a win. And so that just sort of speaks to, one, how wide open the Big 12 still appears to be.
Oh, yeah.
And two, these games are won on a razor's edge. And Sark looked terrified every time they cut to him in the second half, they cut to him in the fourth quarter. And he got to sigh at the end of a game, which is much better than, bowing your head down in shame for having a second half collapse yet again. So good for Texas here.
Let's keep it in the Big 12 and talk about Bedlam, Dan. The last ever Bedlam.
The last on the schedule. We'll see.
On the schedule. Yeah. Can't say anything for sure, but at least in the immediate future, not going to have any more of them. Oklahoma State wins 27-24. Over their hated rival, the Oklahoma Sooners. Can you indulge me for a second?
This is, of course.
I got to eat some crow. I have to. I have to, right?
Yeah.
I have to. I want to eat some crow. I have been in this love-hate thing now with Oklahoma State for well over a year. I hated them before I loved them. I loved them about 3 weeks ago when they beat K-State after their bye week. I was convinced as all hell coming into this game that Oklahoma was the better team. And I'll be honest, this was probably the best I've seen Oklahoma State look all year. I don't know if it's a function of Oklahoma's defense making them look better or if they are legitimately just getting better. But they looked like a fully formed offense in this game. Alan Bowman was sharp. Ollie Gordon, Heisman caliber. Rashad Owens had 17 targets out wide. More importantly, their defense got 3 turnovers in a close game, which I think was ultimately the difference. They rose to the moment in a big rivalry game. They get the win to close out temporarily, perhaps, the Bedlam series. And I just kind of want to apologize. I don't know. I feel very guilty about how negative I was about Oklahoma State at the start of the year. I think I had good reason to feel that way. But obviously, the way they have turned things on the last month or so of the season, it has been a great turnaround story. There's no two ways about it. And now, again, we keep talking about the Big 12 being wide open. Oklahoma State's right there. They're right there.
Sure.
They're right there. So good on them. This is a really, really big win at home.
Yeah, I don't have anything all that insightful to add. I generally don't, but the big deal is that Oklahoma had an opportunity in this one. At the end of the game, even with the turnover disadvantage, that as well as the Pokes played and spreading the ball, you mentioned Rashad Owens, Brennan Presley also made a ton of plays.
Yeah.
Ollie Gordon is no surprise anymore. He came into this game with like 1,100 yards, but Alan Bowman stayed clean, which I thought was super important with how opportunistic this OU defense has been. And for Oklahoma State, even with a bunch of drives that went nowhere in the second half, to hold on to this game, to get the stop, to keep the Oklahoma offense in front of them, huge deal at home. This is what, Gundy's fourth win against Oklahoma, something like that. And to close out, this long-standing rivalry with, no matchup on the horizon. It's a huge deal for Oklahoma State. And yeah, you're absolutely right. Big 12, Oklahoma State, wide open, and should be, November is going to be incredible. I can't wait.
It's going to be wild. By the way, you mentioned Oklahoma's chance at the end of that game. Kind of a controversial call, non-call.
Yeah.
I feel like there was pass interference pretty blatantly committed on Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Down the stretch that was not called. There were a bunch of weird calls all
throughout. It was a weird day in general.
College football week 10. Yeah. A bunch of very strange calls that we will get to, I promise, as we go through this episode. But, it goes in the favor of Oklahoma State. Oklahoma ends up kicking a field goal instead of collecting 6, and perhaps that's the difference. Of course, you never know for sure. To further the point, though, Oklahoma State's got a road game at UCF next week, then a road game at Houston, then they come back home against BYU to close out the season. You're not going to do much better than that in the Big 12. We're going to talk about all these schedules in due time as we go through the next 3 weeks of the season on our preview episodes, but you're not going to find a much easier schedule for a good team than UCF, Houston, and BYU.
Take it.
Take it while you can. So this version of Oklahoma State, the one we saw, I'm still kind of like a little tentative to go all in on the Pokes. I was the last couple weeks. I wasn't this week. If they keep playing like this, I'm going to have no choice. But this version that we saw today, win the Bedlam game, goes 10-2. They go 10-2. They win the rest of their games. They go 10-2. They play for the Big 12.
It's unbelievable. And so Oklahoma State now has obviously the tiebreaker against Oklahoma, and they've beaten Kansas. They don't play Texas this year.
Beat K-State.
They beat K-State. And so the team's floating around. They beat West Virginia. Iowa State they lost to, but Iowa State lost tonight. So they're in an unbelievable position in terms of tiebreakers to unless something horrendous happens, to be in the mix to go to North Texas. It's great.
I agree. We're going to move on now to Washington, USC. I am going to come back later in the episode to Oklahoma.
Yes.
Okay. I want to talk more about Oklahoma, but in a different segment. 52-42. Your final score. Hope you bet the over in Washington, USC, Dan.
What's that, 94 total points?
State school math here, back of the napkin says 94.
Yeah.
This game featured 3 punts, all 3 of them. Hope you enjoyed all 3 of them. Washington was 70% on third down, 7 of 10. Not bad. Dylan Johnson had 256 rushing for 4 touchdowns. Washington had 573 in total offense. I would add on the USC side, second quarter, they had one of the coolest trick plays I've seen in forever.
Mm-hmm.
That, what was that, Zachariah Branch who did the flea flicker, whatever play that was, sort of like the counter flea flicker that I have never seen before that worked swimmingly. That was cool. This was a shootout. This was a shootout in the purest quintessence of the word.
Is that a word? Quintessence? I hope it sounds like it is.
Quintessence. Sure. Look that one up. No idea. Big time shootout. Washington goes on the road and wins. You're the Pac-12 aficionado of the show. What do you think?
We had, by the way, so it's a 7-7 game, okay? Both teams score pretty early on. And then I'm not going to do Dvorak, at least not right now. But this is before halftime and after halftime. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 touchdowns, a fumble, another touchdown, an interception, and then 3 more touchdowns. It was just haymaker after haymaker. Caleb Williams gave everything he could. And you mentioned the stat. Dylan Johnson finished, 256? Is that what you said? Yeah, I think he's the Mississippi State transfer and at running back. It's a Washington team that has not run the ball at all this year. And it's something I talked about incorrectly heading into this matchup, saying I thought Washington would be too stubborn and USC might have opportunities on defense. And then, and I believe this was Kirk Herbstreit, I want to get this correct, during the matchup, mentioned that Dylan Johnson had 199 yards before contact. Before contact. That's too many yards before being touched. That's insane. Good for Washington. A hell of a play from, I don't know if you saw Michael Penix to their tight end, Devin Culp, where he bought time on like 3rd and 18 and nailed Devin Culp along the sideline of the end zone for a touchdown. So a thorough offensive performance from Washington. This is a half a team. And maybe it doesn't mean anything. Maybe they can get away with it the rest of the season and win the Pac-12. It's not a half a team in the way that USC is a half team. USC is at times like 40% of a team because, I don't know, the Marshawn Lloyd didn't play tonight, and they ran the ball fine. The receivers aren't really where they were last year, and you just have to count on Caleb Williams for doing too much.
Yeah.
Washington can make plays on defense. USC can't. That's oversimplifying things. They can't. They are unable to, as a unit, make plays and get off the field against quality opponents, whereas Washington sometimes can. Washington's still a half team. Might not bite them, but it's a reality.
Who's going to beat Washington? If somebody's going to take advantage of Washington, we did the Iceberg show on Tuesday.
Right.
What they've got left now is Utah, a road game at Oregon State, and they close out the year in what I believe will have to be a contentious Apple Cup. They're at home against Wazoo. So is it Oregon State? Is it Utah? Is it – I bring those two teams up because of the defense.
Sure.
And it would seem as if that would pose an interesting challenge for the Huskies. But the way they're playing offense, I do wonder if they're just good enough to rise above it,
Yeah, both of those teams could. Utah because of their defense, Oregon State because the game is in Corvallis. Washington's going to be favored the rest of the way. If we're actually going to live in reality, the team is Oregon. The team is Oregon in the Pac-12 championship game. That if we're going to realistically talk about the team that has the best shot, it's Oregon on a neutral field, who I think Oregon has improved since that matchup and had opportunities in that one, outgained them, won the turnover battle. I think Washington's a great team, but that's the answer for me, that Oregon, until we actually talk about that hypothetical matchup, we're saying, well, yeah, maybe Utah can stop the run or interrupt some passing lanes, whatever. I think their offense is not one that can score enough to beat Washington, and the same probably goes for Oregon State's defense. They just can't get off the field often enough.
Caleb Williams in this game, by the way, had a sick pass to the front pylon. I think it was.
You're going to have to be
Brendan
more
Rice.
specific. I know what you're talking about, but he has 7 to 9 of them every week.
He's so good. He is so good, and you can see that he's balling out. He is leaving it all out there on the field. The play that I am referring to, he scrambles, sort of throws across his body to the front pylon. It didn't even seem as if he could see where he was throwing the ball when he threw it. He just sort of put it up.
There should be a guy there. I hope he is.
And it was thrown precisely to the right spot. I believe Brendan Rice was the guy who caught it. Front pylon. The defender was in quicksand. The ball was just thrown on time, the exact spot it needed to be. Caleb Williams is showing why he's going to be the number 1 pick in the NFL draft. I think he is leaving it all out in the field. And if he had a little bit of help, they would probably be national champions from the defense. But they don't have it.
No.
As you said, sometimes they're 40% of a team, and that's just not good enough, not to beat Washington.
When you we'll get here, by the way, but when you watch Caleb Williams, when you watch Michael Penix, when you watch whoever else, Drake May, Bo Nix, J.J. McCarthy, is there that sense of feeling like Happy Gilmore looking in at the prom and pawing at the window when you have to watch Jared Parker's Notre Dame offense, where you're just
God.
it sure would be fun to root for a team like this. It sure would be fun rooting for a major program that can develop a downfield passing attack, Penn State, Notre Dame. It really could be.
Well, Penn State had one.
Yeah, against Maryland.
Penn State had one today. I don't care who it was against. At least they had one.
That's true.
Notre Dame, that's a different story altogether.
Where are we going next? Bama LSU?
Yeah, let's close out the fire starter segment talking about Bama 42, LSU 28. Do you watch this whole game?
I did.
This is a good game.
It's a great game.
This is
until
a really good
Jaden
game.
Daniels left. Yeah.
Until Jaden Daniels left. Jaden Daniels took a shot late in the game, went out. Garrett Nussmeier had to come in. We'll have to wait and see on Jaden Daniels. He was reportedly in concussion protocol, per the report from Jenny Dell on the sidelines. He was in the tent for a while, tried to come back in for a moment. That didn't really last. This was interesting on a number of different levels, but what I thought was most intriguing to me was how we saw dueling running quarterbacks in this game. Because we've grown to expect that from Jaden Daniels. That's just part of what you get with him at this point. If you go all the way back to when Jaden Daniels was in high school, he was more comfortable running the football. He's just a running quarterback. He's very good at it. He's very quick. He's very shifty. He's very tough. And that has taken LSU to a really interesting place with its offense. They're able to rely on him to do more than just throw the football. They didn't get much else on the ground from Logan Diggs or Josh Williams or John Emery. This was Jaden Daniels rushing for 163 yards and a touchdown. But on the Alabama side, it's even more interesting because Jalen Milroe had 20 rushing attempts for 155 and 4 touchdowns. Some of it was designed. I don't feel like most of it was. I feel like this is a guy who has the speed. Clearly, we always hear about him being able to run the 4.4, but they have not really schemed for him to run. He seems to prefer hanging back and being more of a pocket passer. I think he wants to be a passer.
Sure.
And not a runner. But they are starting to find ways to put him on the move. And when he is on the move, he's sort of untouchable because he is so damn fast, because he's a load to bring down. He put a move on the LSU defense down near the goal line where he just sort of like made a 45-degree cut, and it was like the parting of the Red Sea. He ran in for one of his touchdowns. He's very quick to the edge. It paints a very interesting picture, to be honest with you, about the rest of this SEC season if Jalen Milroe is going to be put on the go like this. 20 for 155, again, 4 touchdowns. You add that in with Jace McClellan, who had a touchdown and averaged 4.5 a carry. You add in Roydell Williams, who averaged a little over 9 a carry and also had a touchdown. Jalen Milroe, if he's able to stretch the field with his arm and still throw deep down the field and give them that level of pop, and then also run the football the way he's been running the football the last, 2 weeks. That is a really interesting dimension for this Alabama offense that we did not see early and I think makes them better a lot later in this season.
Can I make a comparison that's probably too much of a stretch and you can sort of rein me in, but hopefully understand the spirit of it? Watching this game, Jalen Milroe at his best, which, by the way, I don't know if this is going to be painful for you, like kind of a masterwork from Tommy Rees. Putting Jalen Milroe in position to succeed, like putting him getting him to do things that he can do, not trying to make him do things that he's not necessarily developed into yet.
Listen, I've said this for as long as I've watched Tommy Rees coordinate offenses.
Yeah.
The problem that I've always had with his offenses is their one read.
Right.
Their one read. And we always thought that was because he was simplifying it for a quarterback who was a backup in Ian Book or a backup in Drew Pine or a first-time starter in Tyler Buckner. I mean, we had the Jack Cohn years. Okay, that was a little bit different. But by and large, he's been, I think, simplifying the offense. And we've seen those guys still do pretty well in that system where they look for one guy, he's not open, they run.
Right.
And we hadn't really seen that from Jalen Milroe. We're starting to see that from Jalen Milroe. So either that's the game that he is growing into just organically or it's something by design. But either way, it worked. Either way, it worked in the biggest game of their season now, in the SEC season anyway, for them, 42-28.
Yeah, okay. So we come into – you're absolutely right. We come into this game having questions about the Alabama offensive line. LSU is not able to fully take advantage, obviously, because of the escapability of Jalen Milroe and how quickly he can get the ball out when something is there. The rushing attacks seem to be there. The comparison I was going to make is Jalen Milroe is almost like a Brazilian soccer player playing quarterback. The improvisational abilities, the angles he finds, the ability to accelerate, the ability where you think that he is cornered and suddenly he just pops it over to a running back who leaks out. Like that, there is this element of confidence to Jalen Milroe in his own abilities and the abilities of everybody around him where he never feels like he has been trapped. He never feels as if the field has been cut off to his abilities. And we don't see that a lot. And so that the best of Jalen Milroe, I think, can put that on display because there are times where he's sort of rolling out, seeing if somebody's opening up, and then decides to go 10 times faster than he's already going just because he can. And that's truly scary. Now, it's scary for Alabama fans, too, because sometimes he tries to do too much. Sometimes he should run when he tries to do too much through the air. And so as he gets more and more comfortable in his skin, they're going to become more and more dangerous. And not that the LSU defense was one that was going to fully challenge him and force him to be a certain way, but when he is out in space and tasked with making a decision, there are almost fewer bad ones than good ones when he is feeling it. And I don't know if that makes sense when you watch him, but that's what struck me, that there is a certain amount of he is seeing things that others aren't and others can't. And it was truly crazy to watch. And also, should mention, Jaden Daniels got hurt, and the hit was a penalty. It was penalized. Dallas Turner hit him high, was not targeting, he obviously wasn't ejected. I don't know. Like, it didn't seem like Dallas Turner was trying to be dirty, but, man, that leveled him. He hit him high.
Yeah, they were checking his jaw to see if they broke his jaw, and he was out for a while. You could tell that he was probably seeing some stars when he sat up on the field.
Yeah.
And
also, he's incredible. Jaden Daniels is incredible.
Yeah, he's incredible.
Just an incredible quarterback.
He's an incredible quarterback, and you hope he's not going to be out for any extended period of time because there's a strong case to be made that he's the best player in college football.
Yeah.
With the way he puts the team on his back. Malik Neighbors, again. Do you see the catch Malik Neighbors had?
Yep.
Malik Neighbors is kind of uncoverable at this point. LSU really has nothing to hang its head about. Obviously, you want to go to Tuscaloosa and get the win here, but this is still a very, very good team. Just sort of let down in part by their defense again, and also drew the short straw with Jaden Daniels getting hurt late. Who knows what
they were
what
down
that
at the
game
time,
looks
but
like. Yeah, if it's not Garrett Nussmeier. So again, 42-28 was your final score. A big win for Alabama. They've got Kentucky, Chattanooga, and Auburn left on the schedule before presumably an SEC title game against Georgia, which we're going to get to next here. But shall we get to our warm fuzzies?
Let's get to some warm fuzzies.
The Georgia-Mizzou game, Dan.
Yes.
Talk to me about Georgia-Mizzou.
Well, my warm fuzzy here is Nazir Stackhouse, who comes away, nose tackle for Georgia, comes away with that interception and run back that basically seals thing for Georgia. It's just a warm fuzzy when I see a play like that from a big man. Georgia played a very good game. Ladd McConkey continues to be a huge weapon. Obviously, Carson Beck spreading the ball around continually. Ra Thomas had a big catch. Oscar Delp had a touchdown, a really nice move in the end zone to sort of wriggle open between a couple guys in the zone. And the game was pretty incredible. Like, Mizzou kind of played Georgia to a draw. It was just those turnovers. But, Cody Schrader made me feel those warm fuzzies. Luther Burden made me feel those warm fuzzies. I know he's beat up. But you could see the difference, in the second half with depth. These are the types of games when you recruit on Georgia's level, when you are playing well, but you're not a killer, when you have, you're getting great running back play, but what it is, it's just the guys that can come in and out of the game. I know Mizzou was picking on one of the Georgia corners a little bit, but like, Georgia has answers because they have bodies. And so the warm fuzzies to me were Georgia's ability in the second half to come up with those turnovers, another interception later on, Brady Cook driving late. And I still, like, it's not a moral victory. I don't believe in strong moral victories, but Mizzou belongs. And they just need better twos, better threes, and more star power on the level. Like, Theo Wease is good, and obviously Luther Burden's excellent. They just need more capital D dudes. So double warm fuzzies for me.
We got a post in our Verballer Discord. Every week we've got a thread for people to just post game notes. Yeah. Not so much opinions or editorial, but game notes, things that we can use when we do this episode because we're on limited time to prepare, right? Mm-hmm. Got a great comment from a Mizzou fan saying, didn't expect Missouri to win, but I'm left feeling like this time might compete the rest of the season, potentially go 10-2 or 9-3. And so this is one of those deals where I think if you're a Missouri fan, you just want to see how you stack up. You don't want to get blown off the field. They didn't get blown off the field last year when everybody else was getting blown off the field. Remember, that was 26-22. That was a close game.
Was that 2 years ago?
Last year, I want to say. Okay. So it was just one of those deals where if you're Mizzou, obviously there's a renewed sense of optimism with how the offense has found something of an identity now in the early part of the 23 season. And you just want to see how you stack up against the so-called best team in the conference. And I thought, as you said, they did play to a draw. Those 2 interceptions by Brady Cook were killer.
I had no idea what he was doing on the one to Nazir Stackhouse.
No, I mean, those 2 were absolute backbreakers. And that was, I think, what sprung Georgia free and gave them enough separation to win. Final score was 30-21. So it was a good football game the full way through. And I thought Mizzou looked the part. And I'm curious to see what Georgia does the rest of the way. But I think the Georgia offense, the Georgia resiliency, and even the Mizzou level of competitiveness in a big game like this, all of those are grounds for warm fuzzies for sure.
Agree. Elsewhere, the combination of the protection that Jackson Dart got from his offensive line, his own confidence and poise throwing downfield, and then Trey Harris, like that chain of fun excellence against Texas A&M gave me the warm fuzzies. And they're all, they're wearing the perfect Ole Miss blues as well. Yeah. And so that was a fun, weird game that came down to the end, and Max Johnson was making plays. Texas A&M defense was making plays. Obviously, it goes back and forth near the end, and Ole Miss pulls it out. But the warm fuzzies to me were how the offense was operating for Ole Miss.
Penn State threw it down the field, Dan.
Yeah, that's giving you some warm fuzzies?
They threw it down the field.
Yeah.
The hell's going on, man?
It's Maryland week. That's what's going on.
It's Maryland week. Took them 10 damn weeks. But finally, a game that featured a little bit of downfield passing. They let Drew Aller throw it. 4 touchdowns. Who'd have guessed it? Threw it to Dante Cephas.
Yep.
He's been invisible all year. Big name transfer. Everybody wanted Dante Cephas. Haven't seen him. Where's he been? He's been there. Just hasn't been doing anything.
Yeah.
2 touchdowns in this game. So.
Is it at all meaningful?
It is meaningful. Yeah, okay. It's meaningful. It's meaningful. We both were right, by the way, in picking Penn State minus whatever, because it's just against Maryland, and this is just what they do to Maryland.
They do. Yep.
They won 51-15 in this game. It is meaningful because it got Michigan next week.
Yeah.
Because Michigan comes to town.
What time? It's early kickoff? Big noon?
It's a big noon game. Yeah.
Are we going to do a watch along?
We'll see. We'll have to talk it through.
Okay.
But, I mean, this is meaningful to me as somebody who follows the team because this is something that they needed to do. You and I were talking kind of offline about, like, did they have a come to Jesus meeting or something where they just decided they were going to do this? I don't know. But Penn State throwing it down the field, definitely grounds for warm fuzzies, at least on this side of things. Something else. How about some Big 12 nail biters?
I love that.
We already talked about 2 Big 12 games. With the exception of what West Virginia did to BYU, which I believe is outlawed in many countries per UN law.
Yeah.
Every game in the Big 12 was a 1-score affair. Every game.
And that was not a Keaton Slovis BYU, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
Kansas beat Iowa State 28-21 in a back-and-forth game. Good game. Texas Tech beat TCU earlier in the week in another good game that featured a comeback and also an armadillo running out in the field, which was awesome.
Saw that. Yep.
Houston took Baylor to overtime and won. Peter Pope, our friend Peter Pope from our Daily Bears, texted me that, quote, Baylor's defensive line is made of wet toilet paper. Thank you, Peter. We had UCF beating Cincy on the road 28-26 behind a monster 3-touchdown game from R.J. Harvey. The Big 12 remains the most interesting conference in the world. It is always wide open. It's going to get weird down the stretch here. So I look forward to that. I've got more warm fuzzies. I'm wondering what else you got.
No, I was just going to add really nice day from Jason Bean against Iowa State, one of the best pass defenses in America, and he looked exceedingly comfortable. Also in the SEC, the Kentucky defense, I know it's just Mississippi State, and I think the offense only had 2 touchdowns. Defense, I think they pick off Mikey Wright in the end zone, or ish. But taking care of business is very underrated. And Kentucky on the road, I believe on the road, took care of business. So that's meaningful to me. Otherwise, in the SEC, South Carolina eked by. Winning is better than losing. They didn't lose to Jacksonville State. That gave somebody the warm fuzzies that roots for a team wearing garnet and black. Peyton Thorne had another decent game. It's Vanderbilt, but it's Auburn, and the story there is actually Jarquez Hunter, who I think goes for like 180 plus. So a nice win for Auburn, as Auburn is now a game away from going to a bowl in Hugh Freeze's first season. And honestly, the warmest, fuzziest feeling I got was from Arkansas. Arkansas losing all of those games in a row, and I wrote down the Arkansas resolve, right? So you have Rocket Sanders in this one. He's running it well. KJ Jefferson is playing well. They get that early, rip the ball out of the Florida receiver's arms touchdown to go up 14-0 after half a second in this matchup, and then are able to close it out in overtime, bullying Florida around. This is the version of Arkansas we've kind of expected heading into the season. They were going to push teams around. They might lose and bruise. That's what we figured we'd get from the Hogs. And they actually did it against Florida. They kept the Florida passing attack in front of them. They limited Florida. Florida looked sharp. I think they were wearing all black for the first time ever. And there was integrity and honor because it was a military tie-in. But it was a really, really impressive performance from Arkansas after a really, really disappointing stretch of games.
Yeah, somebody sent in that the tip for Iowa is to hire Dan Enos and then fire him.
Yes.
That's the tip to unlocking your offense.
Mm-hmm. That's the neck crack that every program needs.
That's the neck crack. Speaking of taking care of business, let's talk about teams in the ACC-TCB.
Yes.
Taking care of business. We had Louisville pounding Virginia Tech. They held them to 140 yards. We both thought maybe Tech would be competitive in that game.
Yeah. Louisville's just a really good team.
Louisville's a really good team. Yeah,
yeah,
they're really good. They are what they are. We had BC and Duke both winning to get bowl eligible. Another nice game for Thomas Castellanos and the 9-3 goals. We had, on that topic of quarterback, Duke beat Wake with its third-string quarterback, I guess, at this point. Georgia Tech was trailing Virginia 7-3 after the first quarter. Then they outscored them 38-10 the rest of the way to win going away. Another big one for Haynes King. Tech going to a bowl game would be a big-time warm fuzzy, not just for you and I, but for Brent Key. Tech now has 5 wins, so we'll have to monitor that one. They've got some games on the schedule that I think they could win. Also, I did want to say...
I think they just have a game you probably think they can win. But
Syracuse, yeah, Syracuse. They could win Syracuse. I'm not going to play it yet. I don't want to jinx it. We need more body of work.
Okay.
But it is November. Yeah. It is November. And we saw a November moment with John Paddock, a name no one's ever heard of, a 6th-year grad transfer from Ball State, stepping in for Illinois and an injured Luke Altmaier down the stretch. He goes 3 for 3 for 85 yards, including a stunner, a go-ahead 46-yard touchdown pass inside a minute. Technically speaking, Illinois could still win the Big Ten West if they got some help.
What do they need?
I don't know what they need, but they need help. Okay. I don't know exactly what it is. I'll bring the slide rule to our next episode.
The drive for 6 is alive, though.
The drive for 6 is very much alive as Illinois knocks off Minnesota 27-26. I'd also add that Michigan State was a home dog and won outright over Nebraska. Nebraska's got a couple more chances here to try and get bowl eligible. They are 5-4. But Michigan State with a nice win, so good for them.
Warm fuzzies. Continue. Anybody else in the Big Ten that gave you the warm fuzzies? How about Indiana? You're Indiana Hoosiers.
Indiana, man. Indiana beat Wisconsin 20-14.
That's pretty good. Maybe you're saving that for, a different segment.
Snapped a 6-game conference losing streak. So good on them. Good on them.
How about, I don't know if it gives you the warm fuzzies. And again, I'm sure you're saving this for the next segment. But Iowa and Northwestern didn't get anywhere near the total.
Not even close.
Not in the vicinity.
Yeah, not even close.
That's amazing.
I've got that. It's truly amazing. I've got that in the scary story segment.
Fair.
Not to give too much away. That's all I got.
In the sort of warm fuzzies, Bo Nix was incredible. Oregon was incredible. It's just Cal. But Oregon didn't play especially well for a quarter and a half and won that game 63-19, I think was the final.
Yeah.
So that's a pretty good place to be.
In the rain.
Yeah, it was torrential in that first quarter and a half, and I think Oregon only allowed 1 offensive touchdown. It was a bad snap that Cal was able to recover and punch in. That was the other touchdown that they scored. But it was a great performance from Oregon. Mentioned Dylan Johnson before, but worth mentioning once again in the Warm Fuzzy segment. Jaquindon Jackson and Utah absolutely stomped Arizona State, who lost Trenton Bourguet like a minute into this game, and it was a Jacob Conover game, and so it was just over essentially in that very moment.
I have a note here that ASU had 83 yards from scrimmage.
It doesn't feel like enough.
No.
That's my take. There's a bunch of games happening as we're recording right now. Oregon State's up 15, 20-5, which is a score I think everybody can appreciate. Arizona's up a touchdown. Stanford got a win against Wazoo. Guess what, Ty? Did we both have that? I know I did.
Yeah.
So Stanford showing some gumption. Wazoo fading in this second half. I just never thought they'd have the roster to be dangerous for a full season, but good for Stanford stepping up and having one of the more unstoppable receivers in Alec Aomanor. I don't think they did a ton through the air tonight, but they got the win with Ashton Daniels. So good for Stanford and good for Troy Taylor. And that's the extent of my warm fuzzies in the Pac-12.
I hear some rustling around in the bushes.
You heard some rustling around in the bushes?
I hear some.
Should we make sure that
I hear some rustling around in the bushes? We've got the fire. Generally, the critters are afraid of the fire, but we should probably go check.
Well, it is a campfire. Oh, my God, Ty. Just a quick bear check-in. We've got a lot of bears in this sport. This is bear spray. We're spraying around the sport. Baylor, as you mentioned, lost to Houston. I'm counting Bearcats. Cincinnati, you mentioned, lost to UCF. Sam Houston on the board in the win column. They beat Kennesaw State in Kennesaw's final season as an FCS team. Mentioned Cal losing to Oregon. The Black Bears of Maine lost to Hampton. Morgan State beat Delaware State. Missouri State lost to Illinois State. Central Arkansas beat North Alabama. And the Grizzlies of Montana beat Sacramento State handily. So there's your bear update.
One lost Montana, man.
One lost
Montana.
Montana.
This year. All right. Give me the scary stories sound, please. Let's talk about the weird things, the bad performances, the injuries, all the scary stuff around the campfire here. College football week 10. Ohio State. Number 1 team in the country, yeah?
Number 1 team, college football playoff rank. Yep.
Number 1 team in the college football playoff rankings, going up against the number 1 team in terms of tackle success rate. It's something. The Rutgers Scarlet Knights. To Ohio State's credit, they win. They barely cover the 18.5. They end up beating the Scarlet Knights in Piscataway by a 35-16 score. Rutgers acquits itself very well. I think they did a pretty good job shutting down most of what Ohio State had to offer. What they didn't have an answer for was Trey Henderson. Trey Henderson had over 200 total yards. This was an Ohio State team, though, that frankly did not look good. They did not look good. In the first half especially, they did not look good. In the second half, they turned it on. They kind of found their way. But this was a game I didn't think Kyle McCord looked all that good. I didn't think the offense looked all that good. We've been hearing a lot on the Ohio State side that this is a team, quote, led by defense. And I'm starting to wonder if that's just a thing people say because the offense isn't very good or because they're not playing very good offenses. Bear in mind, maybe their 2 best wins this season, Notre Dame and Penn State, have not really shown much in the way of a downfield threat. So I'm just wondering, by the time they get around to a team like a Michigan, what does the future hold for them? I don't think the version of Ohio State we saw today is going to beat Michigan. I don't think they're within 14 points.
Likely not. Yeah.
They're not within 14 points of them. They're just not. Another scary story for me. What was with the field in the USC game? Did you see that?
It was sandy? Is that what you saw?
It looked like painted dirt. It looked like painted dirt. It reminds me of if there are any golfers out there, when they aerate the greens, when they punch them out and they fill the holes with sand.
Right.
And you hit your ball into the green and it lands and you just see this puff of sand go up every time. And these are like 300-pound guys running around out on the field. Yeah. Every time one of them takes a heavy step, you see this cloud of something pop up from the soil at the Coliseum. I would like somebody to get to the bottom of that. Maybe our friend Ryan Abraham can get to the bottom of what the hell is going on with that field. Because it looked, again, painted dirt is what it looked like to me.
Yeah. Okay. I only saw it for a little while. Continue. Any other?
Florida State.
Yeah.
Notice I left them out when I talked about TCB taking care of business in the ACC. Florida State beat Pitt 24-7. They pulled away late. They don't really look that good. They got to get that figured out. They can't take weeks off if they want to be a national championship contender. So they got the win. We're not going to dwell on it too much, but that was not a great showing. The Miami offense, again, no bueno in a loss against NC State. TVD, no bueno, not good. Extra yuck. And Mario having another one, Dan.
Yeah.
Having another one. Miami offense definitely not firing on all cylinders. That brings me to my two final scary moments, scary stories, if you will. I have gone this whole freaking episode without talking about the Clemson-Notre Dame game, Dan.
I was wondering when you were going to get there.
I've gone this whole episode. We did a live watch along. For the most part, I behaved myself. In the second half, I started drinking, partially out of necessity. Okay?
Yep.
Clemson won this game 31-23. I mentioned to you on the stream, I got a text from our mutual friend Tim Murray over at VSiN.
Brag much, yeah.
On Friday night that a couple of the books out in Vegas had a 5-1 Notre Dame to Clemson ticket ratio, i.e. everybody was betting Notre Dame.
Yeah.
And from one Notre Dame fan to another, his comment to me was, I'll censor it a little bit. Yeah. His note to me was, we're screwed. We're screwed. And they were. They were. In the end, this was a Clemson team that I thought answered the critics. It shut up, what's his name from Spartan? Tyler from Spartanburg. They shut him up. Maybe he'll call in this week and they can have another staged debate. If Clemson falls to 4-5, it's a much different conversation. But the fact that they won this game, the fact that they beat a top 15 team, they look good with Phil Maffa, ran angry, had 2 touchdowns and 186. They really showed a lot of fight here. So I give them credit for that win. But this was a very poor effort from Notre Dame offense. This is a very poor effort. This line got pushed around. Sam Hartman did not look good the whole game. Audric Estime looked better early and then faded late. There was nary a threat of anything down the field, especially late in the game when they really needed it. If they had one more screen pass, Dan, on 3rd and long, or one more run up the middle on 3rd and medium, I thought I was going to scream. This just feels like, you know what this feels like? This feels like the offensive playbook out of Tecmo Bowl, where there are legit 4 plays that they run. Not even Tecmo Super Bowl with the 8. This is the Tecmo Bowl version.
Right.
With 4 plays, and that's all you get. Those are the only 4 that work. If the defense guesses one of them, they're bursting through the line, and they're going to stop you for a loss. But this offense is Notre Dame's been screaming what it is all year long. And why I chose to think otherwise in a game like this against at least a respectable defense in the Clemson Tigers on the road, I don't know why I convinced myself otherwise. But this was a poor effort. This was their 3rd loss of the year. It's a disappointing season. This is a disappointing season for the Notre Dame Fighting Irish.
Look, Notre Dame killed the team that decisively beat Notre Dame, right? They killed Pitt. Pitt beat Louisville. Yeah. Right? It all makes sense.
No, it makes perfect sense. Yeah.
No, it'd be very easy to say like the miscues did Notre Dame in that, they have Chris Tyree muffing a punt. That leads to, I think, a field goal. Obviously, Sam Hartman throws the pick 6 to Jeremiah Trotter. So there's 10 points right there. But Notre Dame also recovered a fumble and had like a 1-yard drive for a touchdown.
They had opportunity after opportunity, especially late in the game, to come back and tie this thing. And it would have been an altogether different conversation if they had scored a touchdown, trying to figure out what's the 2-point play going to be. Probably a run up the middle or a screen pass, just guessing. But obviously they didn't do that. They didn't come anywhere close to it. And so it's just really frustrating that in those big moments, if it's not Sam Hartman going on a 25-yard run or doing something heroic, they have nobody down the field who can get open, or they're not giving Sam Hartman enough time to feel comfortable to set and throw down the field. Whatever it is, something is still out of sync with this offense. It's not going to show up when you play a team like a Pitt, but it is going to show up when you play a team with a decent enough defense like Clemson, and it did.
So, okay, Notre Dame brings it to 31-23 after the Sam Hartman 30-yard touchdown run, right?
Mm-hmm.
The next 9 drives in this game, so it's 5 plays, 3 plays, 3 plays, 4 plays, 5 plays, 3 plays, 3 plays, 3 plays, 5 plays, all punts in this game. Trading punts, and then the game ends with interception, fumble, downs. So it's Notre Dame interception, Clemson fumble, Notre Dame downs. It was ugly football. These two teams are sort of conjoined reeling twins, and
they're
Clemson
made for
was
each
able
other.
to win. They're absolutely made for each
These
other.
teams are made for each other. The final scary story is the Iowa game.
Please.
I'm setting you up for this. You have to do Dvorak for this. You just have to. I'm not even going to give you the option.
Fine.
You have to do it for this game. The final was 10-7 in favor of Iowa. They kick a field goal with a minute and a half left or something. I don't know. To win 10-7, your over-under was 31 points, I want to say. It closed at 31. It started at 29. This is a horrible football game. I hope nobody watched it, but Dan, at least make us feel good about it.
Punt, punt, missed field goal, punt, interception, punt, 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 end of half, punt, touchdown, punt, punt, downs, punt, touchdown, field goal, mercifully, end of game. Thanks, Wrigley.
Unbelievable.
Thanks for hosting that.
This game finished with 170 yards of offense for Northwestern and 169 yards for the Iowa Hawkeyes. So in that sense, very evenly matched. In that sense, also depressingly boring on offense. A ton of punts. And Iowa continues winning. Iowa 7-2.
And Iowa's touchdown came off of a blocked punt, I think.
Right.
It was a 20-yard drive. Notre Dame. Northwestern's touchdown came off of a 22-yard drive. So it's not like they just randomly strung together 68, 14 plays, 63 yards. No. They needed the short fields. It's real bad. It's real bad. Okay, next.
That's
you
all
want
I
any
got.
more scaries from me?
If you got them.
Yeah, I mean, I had the Florida tackling. I had Mizzou in big moments. I've got the whole Colorado experience with Pat Shurmur replacing Sean Lewis, but Sean Lewis is still signaling in plays. They've been awful. Shedeur Sanders is hurt, unfortunately. I think it was a leg injury. So I think the Colorado experience is going to be sort of an ongoing scary story at the moment.
Yeah.
I actually have some G5 warm fuzzies. I know it's going back, but
No. There were some big ones. This was a big week in G5.
it was a huge week. I don't know. I don't think I have any more scary stories in the SEC. I mean, Vanderbilt's just inconsistent. They need to do more with Clark Lee. They need to figure something out and quickly. And again, if you're a South Carolina fan, this is a bigger picture scary story, but Jacksonville State's right there. They're just actively getting worse every week.
No.
And I don't know what you do. Okay. Can we talk some G5 warm fuzzies real quick?
Yeah, please.
Okay.
Please.
So we have Tulane holding on to beat ECU. We've got 3 undefeated teams, Tulane, SMU, and UTSA in the American. UTSA, they weathered the North Texas comeback with Kavorian Barnes, did a nice job. Memphis won in a shootout over USF, a big day through the air for Seth Hennigan and his couple big receivers. Charlotte started the game down 17-0 and won in overtime. Biff Poggi against Tulsa. SMU stays undefeated in the American. Akron. How about Akron? A nice comeback win over a truly awful Kent State. I don't know what the Fresno score is right now. They're up at the half. No Ginty for Boise.
Yeah, 27-20 right now, start of the fourth quarter in favor of Fresno.
Okay, Fresno's up a touchdown as we record. How about Army stomping Air Force?
23-3?
In Denver.
Killed them.
From the jump, Army just completely handled them. UNLV and Jaden Maeva laid waste to New Mexico. UNLV sits at 7-2. I don't know that any UNLV team has ever won 7 games, let alone gone 7-2 at any given time. Good for UNLV. JMU, easy win. Jordan McLeod, an all-purpose effort through the air and on the ground over Georgia State. So James Madison, still without a loss.
Beautiful.
It's pretty great.
Yeah, JMU killed them.
Yeah.
That game wasn't even close.
Yeah, it's wire to wire.
Let's get to some roasts.
Here's to roast Stay Puft Marshmallows by the fire at Camp Wakanda.
My roast is that I'm sick of Oklahoma. I am
What?
I'm sick of them.
Okay.
I'm sick of Oklahoma, and I suspect Oklahoma fans are sick of them too. It feels to me like being an Oklahoma fan is the definition of insanity, because every week, every season, I should say, not every week, but every season is the same, where you kind of start out with this unfettered optimism about what the season could be. We do preview episodes. We start talking about, hey, they might have a chance to win the Big 12, potentially be a playoff team. They've got it all kind of there for them. And it never really comes to fruition. I wonder if in a weird way last season was therapeutic, because it was a new coach. You were willing to give Brent Venables the benefit of the doubt that he'd figure it out, but it wasn't all that surprising in retrospect that he didn't. It wasn't all that surprising that it took a little bit, but I say therapeutic because at least it was different.
Right.
At least it was different than the norm, and it kind of got people primed and ready to go for this season. But I just keep coming back to this, and I was watching this game, the Bedlam game today, thinking it. Every year it's Big 12 favorite, Big 12 co-favorite. Every year it's something like this, again, where they find a way to fall short, often because of defense today, because of, I'd say, turnovers. And now they're going into the SEC, man. They go into the SEC next year, which I don't think is going to make things any easier.
You see Nate Bargatze say that Oklahoma is going to be the Vanderbilt of the SEC. It's great.
Vanderbilt of the SEC. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if I go to those extremes, but
well, it's also just a nonsensical statement. It's great.
Yeah, but I'm saying this not to dunk on Oklahoma fans.
Yeah.
Because I've been high on Oklahoma too. They were one of my locks this week. I was convinced that they were better than Oklahoma State. And so it's just really frustrating to watch these games and feel like there's a lot more in there and they're not tapping into it. And that was true throughout the Lincoln Riley era. In the early part now, the Brent Venables era, we're seeing it again. So I don't know if new players next year can maybe change that. I don't know if a new conference, new scenery, or what can maybe change that fate for the better. A good Oklahoma team, a team on this same level, probably makes the 12-team playoff next year, provided there aren't late losses or any kind of catastrophes. But in terms of truly tapping into that potential and winning the conference and being a bona fide contender, it's just really frustrating. I don't know.
Okay. My roast is having future schedules be released during the season and reinforce the fact that we're not getting Oregon State next year. We're not getting the Apple Cup next year. We're not getting Bedlam next year. We're not getting a bunch of matchups. And this is like off-season realignment talk during the season, which is, you can roast me for this. I don't care. But there is something about like watching an incredible back and forth in Bedlam and saying, yeah, that's it. Yeah, sorry. We're just not going to have this anymore. And it feels so deflating. It feels so deflating to watch a fun back and forth game where I guess you have skin in the game because you're putting your emotional weight behind Oklahoma. But, seeing even like Oregon Cal for me, like I can think of a million crazy matchups between those two teams, or, 15 or something like that. And knowing that we're not going to be getting these matchups, even like Arizona, UCLA, even, Oklahoma, Kansas, like all of these matchups, we're just like, yeah, this is the last time. Sorry, guys.
It sucks.
And so, like, there is that element during the game where the announcers bring that up. We're like, well, we don't know if we're ever going to see this again. That just brings me down. And it's week 10. It's my favorite week, and it's still my favorite week. But, yeah, having that happen and the Big 10 schedule release was this past week, and then the ACC released something about how everything's going to be organized, and, Stanford and Cal are always going to play SMU. They're rivals now. Like, cool. That brought me down. That's all.
Well, shall we get to our reverbs?
Yeah, we got reverbs and dudes. How about that?
We got reverbs and dudes. We had a bunch of calls. Dial into 855-VERBAL-3. Let's have a listen to what the Verballerhood had to say on this college football week 10.
I've appreciated all the warnings, but I've learned of a new danger from betting on college football, of which I was not aware until today. Sports gambling just became legal here in Maine, and I found myself betting on games I never would have dreamed of. And here I am, having watched over 30 minutes of Iowa-Northwestern without seeing a single point scored. Warn your friends.
Hey, Ty and Dan, I don't even know if you can get this, but I'm calling from the Oklahoma State field. A field storming is very chaotic, but we gave them Sooners to send up. Push your luck in the SEC. Go Pokes.
Hey, it's Steve from Stillwater. As everyone knows, it doesn't matter who wins most. It only matters who wins last. Bragging rights for eternity have been secured.
That's true.
You should win your clunkers. And let's be real, Texas was not in a clunker, and then they were in a clunker. So, good job, Texas.
This is Zach from Fayetteville, just calling in to say that my Arkansas Razorbacks just took down the Florida Gators in the swamp for the first time ever. And I want to give some advice to Iowa. I know how to fix your offense. You hire Danny Nose, and then you fire him.
Yep.
A&M can't be mediocre forever, right? Like, it's been nearly 100 years since the last championship. It'll happen someday. I'll be here, I hope.
Just over here celebrating another Georgia Tech win on an odd week, not an even week. Very proud. Hi. The disrespect. Picking Virginia. How could you? I trusted you.
Here's a roast for the Campfire. Wake Forest lost to Duke's third-string quarterback on Thursday, and today, our former quarterback tied the record for most losses to Clemson. We're in hell, and it's full of Blue Devils and Tigers.
You know how you make up to your quarterback, Heisman contender, for a tipped pass interception on the first play of the game? Make 12 catches for 180 yards and 2 touchdowns. Bo Nix is him. Go Ducks.
Look, obviously Purdue is going to get smoked by Michigan. So at least they could have had some fun and come out with some giant play cards with maybe James Bond or Ethan Hunt, maybe Connor Roy and Secretariat. Just something like that. At least have a little bit of fun in the game that you're going to lose by 50 points.
You got to say, as an LSU fan, I'm really proud of the humanity our defense is showing. Their quarterback is cheap shot, and they decided to not play better or even try to get vengeance. Instead, they just let Roll Tide roll. Go Tigers.
Oh, Ty and Dan. Oh, buddy. I'm here in Stillwater, and I never thought we would win, but we did it. The Pokes pulled it out. The last Bedlam, the ultimate Bedlam. Ultimate Bedlam. We won. Go Pokes!
At work, in our break room, there's a whiteboard where you'll put important notes. So I wrote, it's the first Saturday of November. Alabama LSU. Roll Tide. Go Tigers. And a coworker wrote, okay, question mark? What the hell's wrong with people?
Oh, what is wrong with people?
That's great.
Good one. Good one. Thanks to our guy Shay for cutting those up, doing a marvelous job. Thank you to everybody who dialed into 855-VERBAL-3 to leave your roasts, your reverbs, your messages for this college football week 10. So we didn't have Sean McDonough do Dua Lipa.
No, Dua Lipa. No.
We didn't have that. We did have fun, though, on the stream. You do a wonderful McDonough impression.
I disagree, but yeah, it's fun.
Which we'll find a way to incorporate more. I don't believe we had the fantasy thing, the horned up RG3, but he did wear that hat that he wore a few weeks ago.
Yes, he wore the furry hat. Yep.
He wore the hat. So we can count that as a half credit for you if you're okay with that.
I'm definitely okay with it.
All right. Well, folks, I believe that does it.
You want some dudes real quick?
Another week of college football here in week 10. We will, of course, save the best for last. Dan, let's do the Doodle Alert. Who we got?
Oh, man, we have so many. We have Bo Nix and Tez Johnson, the brothers, getting loose. Bo Nix, 6 total touchdowns. Jalen Milroe, Dylan Johnson, once again, 199 yards before contact. Jaden Daniels in a losing effort. We had somebody respond with TVD. That's not nice. Ollie Gordon, Jason Bean, Nazir Stackhouse, I mentioned, absolute dude. Sorry, Phil Maffa got a lot of votes here, Ty. He did run like an absolute dude.
He was a beast, man. He looked good.
He was
looked
very
better than Will
good.
Shipley. He looked really, really good. Good for him. He should be a dude.
Rock Taylor out wide for Memphis, goes for 159 and 2 touchdowns. We have R.J. Harvey for UCF in a winning effort, 3 touchdowns, 164 yards. E.J. Warner for Temple in a winning effort, throws for 400. Jacob Zeno for Trent Dilfer and UAB goes for 484 and 5 touchdowns. Josh Hoover in a losing effort goes for 353. Unfortunately, had those 2 picks. I mentioned Memphis. Seth Hennigan, another week, going for 350 and 4 touchdowns. And Jackson Dart to Trey Harris. That was an absolute dude connection as well.
The dude connection. Thank you to one and all for participating in Dude Alerts and Reverbs. And, of course, this here episode, we encourage you to hit subscribe or follow as you are listening along at home. That, of course, helps Dan and I out, helps promote the show to more people, helps grow the Verballerhood. You can, of course, go on out to verballers.com. We've got more people joining each and every week because they want to be part of our Discord, because they want to get ad-free episodes, because they want to play in the Run the Board game. Yeah, they want to compete. We've got all sorts of bonus perks that we offer out there, again, at our Patreon at verballers.com. Go and check that out. And, of course, if you like the show, make sure you rate and review the show. That all helps people find Dan and I.
Agree on everything.
College football week 10 in the books.
Love it. Big one next week. Can't wait.
They're all going to be big from here on out.
That's true.
They're all going to be big. We have not seen the chaos yet, and you know it's hiding under the surface. You just know it.
I just know I have Oregon USC at 10:30 Eastern next Saturday night.
We're going to get you in full regalia and a bundle of nerves when we record this episode in week 11.
Yeah, 9:30 Central. Great. Cool.
Beautiful.
Awesome job, everybody.
For that guy over there, my good friend Dan Rubenstein, for myself, Ty Hildenbrand, thanks again for downloading, for listening, for supporting the Solid Verbal College Football Podcast. We'll talk to you all soon. In the meantime, stay solid.
Peace.